if you read Dune and you were thinking, you know what, this is a little too straightforward, it's not enough for me, maybe pick up Book of the New Sun.
I would not recommend doing a solo read. You should buddy read this with somebody. This is a story about a torturer who does the blasphemous thing in his torturer's guild and shows mercy. I like this book less the more you talk about it. I don't want to feel, you're sounding too pretentious. I don't like it. Give me some Red Rising. Ugh. Ugh.
Well, okay.
Feel transported. Ugh. Welcome back to another Tutor Ramble episode. I'm one of your hosts, Austin.
I'm your other host, Richard.
Duh. That's what you're going to hear most of this episode today because we read The Shadow of the Torturer, as in you will be tortured if you don't like to think, because this book is a book one where we're going to give spoiler free for the first 15 minutes of this book. And then we'll get into spoilers. So no spoilers yet. We'll give the premise and all that because there's a lot to discuss to see if you want to read this book or not. Because this is not a recommend to everybody. This is not a don't read. This is specific readers must read this book. Other readers should not read this book.
Basically, if you read Dune and you were thinking, you know what, this is a little too straightforward, it's not enough for me, maybe pick up Book of the New Sun. In all honesty, like I say that unironically in the sense of I now look at Dune of like, man, that was really straightforward.
Oh, extremely.
Extremely.
Psychedelic stuff is fine. It's whatever.
It's fine. It's whatever.
Flippity-floppity.
Who cares?
So this is written by Gene Wolfe, and it's in the Book of the New Sun series. This is book one, The Shadow of the Torturer. We have in front of us here the first two books. So you'll see it says Shadow and Claw, which is the second book is Claw the Conciliator. We've only read book one, so this is only spoiler free on book one stuff. And it was essential to our reading experience where both Rich and I read this and kind of looked at each other and went, what did we just read?
Yeah.
It was essential. We read this because Talking Story, John and Jacob from Talking Story, we'll link down below. We had a conversation and a book club discussion with Talking Story, Christopher Rocchio, author of Sun Eater, and a whole bunch of other creators where we broke down this book, or they broke it down to us, because Christopher Rocchio, author of Sun Eater, this is his favorite book series of all time. This is his thing. He says if there was a book written for him, it was this. Other than his own series, because he's writing his own series, if it was like somebody had control of what stuff he would like, it is exactly this stuff. And I would say anybody going into this, if you were just going to read this alone and then that's it, just enjoy it yourself, I would not recommend doing a solo read. You should buddy read this with somebody.
Yeah. If I'm looking at this book and now in hindsight from our live discussion and breakdown review, or just our whole discussion with it on Talking Stories channel, this review would be very, very different.
Yes.
To the point of almost worthless, I guess. I feel far more comfortable now talking about the book after our discussion, and also just made me far more excited to read the next book.
100%. Because without it, I think differently of the book now. This is one of those that the reading experience is better on a reread.
Oh, yeah.
I would compare, maybe the best comparison just because of vibes is if you really like Malazan. If you're a Malazan fan and you love that fantasy, maybe confusing is the wrong word for Malazan, but just it doesn't hold your hand at all. This is the sci-fi version of that, because if we haven't mentioned, this is a sci-fi book.
Yes.
By Gene Wolfe, he's a Catholic, and the whole concept of this, which I thought was fascinating, and of course I had to look into this more to figure out, I didn't just see this all, I had to find out afterwards about a lot of this, but this is a story about a torturer who does the blasphemous thing in his torturer's guild and shows mercy. And so he goes on this journey. I'll give the quick 2-sentence blurb here that it gives on Goodreads. It says, it is a tale of young Severian, an apprentice in the guild of torturers on the world called Earth, exiled for committing the ultimate sin of his profession, showing mercy toward his victim, and follows his subsequent journey out of his home city of Nessus. Now that sounds like it makes sense.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward.
How is the actual book? What was your experience, and what would you warn people going in to make sure that they go in with the right expectations?
If you go in there just kind of skimming and expecting to understand just what you're told, you're going to miss so much. This is one that you kind of have to slow down, really pay attention, because there's so many references to further understand the context of where you are and what's happening. There are plenty of things that in our discussion, like it was right off the bat, some big kind of revelation was thrown to me. I'm going like, I didn't see that at all. Happened several times, but
not spoiler, but it was the literal setting of where the character was.
Yeah, it was wild to me. And so I'll keep it spoiler free for it, but it can be so tricky in the sense of Matt from Matt's Fantasy Reviews when he first reviewed it, because how he does his reviews is just as soon as he's finished reading it, he talks in front of the camera. He thought he had no spoilers, no knowledge about the book before going into it. He thought it was a fantasy romp, and it's like post-apocalyptic sci-fi.
This is it's a dying Earth.
A dying Earth story.
It's called Book of the New Sun.
I think that's an important thing to know going into the book.
Yes.
I think that just helps. If you know it's a dying Earth, our Earth, with that knowledge, look at everything.
I think our Earth.
I think so.
It could be different, but
Earth,
I think
as far as
yeah.
we know.
Yeah.
But that's important knowledge to know, because when you are paying attention to little details along the way, try to picture in your head how it's described. There will be a lot of references to what the thing actually is.
This is Gene Wolfe, people will say, is asking a lot of the reader, and that's very true, because it's active participation. You do not want to read this casually. You have to focus. This is not a brush by. You will be confused. I promise. You will not pick up on everything. There's no way if you go into this, even if you read details of, even if you watch spoiler-free reviews and feel like you have your expectations properly aligned, you still will be confused. We can only prep you so much before getting into the prose, which is very dense and excellent. It's excellent, yet extremely dense, where other people who are scholars of Gene Wolfe who know better than us say that literally every sentence has multiple meanings and there's depth to it, and you can't remove a sentence. It's that precise, which we can't pick up on everything. It's so difficult.
Yeah, after reading book 1, I'm already committing to reading the series again after finishing the 4th book. I think I have to fully appreciate it.
These books need a reread. Yes. If you're going in just wanting to get everything from one, no. I think that's impossible. If you want to read The Shadow of the Torture, we have an affiliate link in the description below. And like I said, this should be read with a book club. And why not the Tutor Ramble book club? We have our own book club, link in the description below, where you can support us on Patreon. And if anybody joins and reads this book, we will discuss it, because I could discuss this a number of times and still not get everything out of it. Several book clubs should be done with this. Yes. So we'll do it in waves of people coming and discuss. Our patron thoughts. We had some patrons read this at Coop & Co. or reading this book, and as they finished, it was fun because they were saying, "Oh, did you catch this?" And everybody goes, "What? That was in the book? What was that?" And we had similar experiences too. Yeah. Scott just finished, and he says these 3 words, and I think I agree precisely. He says, bizarre, unapproachable, interesting.
Yeah. That's about right.
Yeah. What word would you do to encapsulate this thing?
It's literature made art, is what it is.
Art.
This is, when people are like, "Oh, is that a book? Is it literature?" This is literature.
Got it.
I think even my dad would have to stand back and appreciate its craft.
Your dad, who's famously hates us and all things fantasy sci-fi. Yes. Except Project Hail Mary and The Martian.
Basically.
Yeah. I pulled up 3 different Goodreads reviews here.
Oh, also say, Coop says book good, which, I mean, that's all that really needs to be said about the book.
That's true. That's true. I pulled up 3 Goodreads reviews that are all spoiler free. I'm showing a 1-star, a 3-star, and a 5-star, just to bear with you watching this. If you think you're prepared for this, why we're recommending this to specific people, not everybody. You could easily hate this if this isn't your thing. If you go into this, especially with different expectations or not liking this kind of story we're explaining, you could leave very bitter and feel like it's a waste of time because it's not a straightforward narrative. It requires a lot of you. This is if you want literature. I guess that is a great one-word descriptor for this. But this is to give you the 3 perspectives you can leave walking out of finishing this book. The first is from Chris Hott, who gave it a 1 star. And pardon me for the language, but Chris was upset. This is a 1 star, and Chris says, "I tried. Fuck it. That was my original review, but not much to go on. Then again, if I took up 200 pages with flowery words of why this book sucked, I'd be doing the same thing the author of this piece of shit did. I get that Gene Wolfe is smarter than I am. Frankly, I don't give much of a fuck. I'm reading a book for a story. Tell me one. And while you're doing that, try using the language that your readers read, in this case, English. Wolfe has this insanely annoying tendency to make up a bunch of words without definition and string them throughout the narrative, making the reader feel like the dumb fucks because they don't know what they mean. Many of these you can pick up in context until after the halfway point, at which the book context just goes out the window because you don't know what the fuck is going on." So, Chris's 1 star review. Is any of that wrong?
No, not complete. I mean, he's saying a bunch of fluff and nonsense. It clearly isn't. Even in his own review, saying like, "I get it. I know he's smarter than me." Yeah, it's a puzzle you do have to put together, which is the point. Like, ultimately, if I were to, like, we'll get into it in the spoiler section, but if I were to actually simplify this plot of like, just say what actually does happen, in all honesty, not that fun of a book, not that fun of a story, really, of what literally happens.
Oh, simple. Yeah.
It's very simple. Fine. But that's not where the enjoyment is. The enjoyment is putting the puzzle together.
How does it happen?
How does it happen? Yeah. What's important? Where are we exactly? And dealing with an unreliable narrator and discussing like what isn't being shown. That's incredibly fun.
Right. And for this reader, if you're not picking up on stuff, but also just don't get it and don't want to have to solve a puzzle, you're just going to leave frustrated and go, "Hey, I want to be told what this reader said. I want a story. Yeah. I don't want to have to do this." So if you think you're going to be in that camp of reader, I would not recommend it. Then we get to the 3-star reviews. This could also be a possible reaction that you have to the book. Marcus from Goodreads says, "I have no idea what to say about this book. I don't even know what I thought of it. I've heard that it's supposed to be a difficult read. I disagree. I've heard that the writing is outstandingly beautiful. I disagree. And so neither my positive nor my negative expectation was met. Moreover, the story was a mess, the main character was a mess, and the setting was a mess. Somehow it was good." The end.
I feel like his subconscious knows there's more going on and he can't articulate it, which is fair because I had a hard time too before it was literally beaten into my head during our discussion.
Yeah. Before we had a discussion with everybody, if we were to do this review, you would just go, "I don't understand it, but I know it's good.
And I know I like it, but I don't know why."
I can't explain why I like it. Yeah. And then the 5-star review from Nick Borelli says, there are certain books that can be considered life-changing experiences. Gene Wolfe is an author who has written one of those for me. The Shadow of the Torture may well be my favorite fantasy book of all time if you pinned me down and forced me to give you an answer. Now, I gave that example just to be, this book is... There's people who like it. You can go online to Goodreads. It has a lower rating, 3.8 something, 3.7 something. Storygraph has a lower rating. I guess in general, if you were to go on Rotten Tomatoes and it was to have a score, this would have a lower audience score, much lower audience score, very high critic score, where you have... I think Gene Wolfe is writing for other writers in a lot of the sense, where he gets not just Christopher Rocchio's praise, but Neil Gaiman gave a bunch of praise and a whole list of authors who, a comedian,
Ursula K. Le Guin,
comedians who aren't comedians for audiences, but are a comedian's comedian, that other comedians like their comedy because it's in that space. This can sometimes come across that way of, it can come across pretentious, which I wouldn't disagree with that. It is. It can very much come across like that too.
You can be pretentious and also correct.
But I'm trying to build up so much expectation here to go, hey, if you're going to go into it, go in with an open mind, because this will not align with a lot of the books you've ever read. I just wanted to make that very clear before asking Rich what your official spoiler-free Rambler rating is. I'm so curious. This could be anywhere.
Yeah. We're starting off strong, boys and girls.
Okay.
Overall,
Yep.
I gave this one a 4.75. The Shadow of the Torturer.
Nearly floored you.
Nearly floored me.
It's one of those books. So you definitely.
It's one of those books I kept a little in reserve because, you know what? It very well could be, depending on how the whole series goes, that I'll just give all 4 books a 5.
Depending.
And I'll retroactively go back and reread book 1 and go, I
get it now.
You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
reserving that 0.25 for the reread.
That makes sense. So the book's pretentious, smarter than this tracks for why you gave it a 4.75. Yeah. It tracks. Now, why that? Why did nearly floor you? Who would you say should read this book if they agree with your opinions typically? I know we've said a lot of that. Maybe that's a bad question. Not who should read it, but more so you were nearly floored you of what
I was
did,
nearly
what did it.
floored with. So even when I was just reading the book before our discussion, I really enjoyed it for piecing together all the puzzles and trying to find the aspects of our world. What is the actual meaning? Where are the lies coming through? What's not being shown to me? And ultimately the big mystery of this world and setting. Incredibly mysterious, very misleading, where you're piecing it together where you know the main character doesn't see everything. And ultimately, you have to outthink the narrator and main character. You can't trust them. That's fun for me. Really fun. The world is wildly confusing in the sense of it's nothing like I've ever read. Even the characters, the human characters, don't act the same way as humans should, and so things can come across as stilted, but I feel like it's almost on purpose because this is a dying Earth story. Humans don't act the same, and so that was fun for me to put together. I had a wild time actually reading it myself, and then after our discussion on Talking Stories channel, again, check it out. I love the book even more.
Without that discussion, would your rating be lower?
Yeah, definitely would be.
Mine would too. This is one that you need discussion to think more highly of it because initially I would have been lower than this. I think I left not knowing what to think. It was just a flat 3 stars. I need to think. After discussion and looking back at this book and my excitement for next book, I give it 4 stars out of 5. Great book. That being said, there's categories that it's not going for. So I would say the worst category is plot. If you're a plot reader, there is a lot, not that he's not artistic about it and doesn't know what he's doing. It's not for a plot reader. The best part about this book, without a doubt, is the prose. Now, people can call it pretentious prose and too flowery or just doing too much, but it is unique and one of a kind. And we'll get into that during the review. But you mentioned something I don't think we focused on enough was that it's an unreliable narrator. Mm-hmm. So that's important to go into this where the narrator Severin is so unreliable that you don't know. He will gloss over things that he did. And you go, wait a second, what did he just do? And he'll keep out things that you can presume that he's hiding from you. And on top of that, because the hook of this book, the last hook I got for you is just imagine someone growing up in a world where torturing is morally sound. That's a good thing. Torture is good, and you grow up believing this, and it's just without question, people accept that. Torture is good. And I think that was a lot of the inspiration for writing this book, which we can get into the themes, but to give a little bit of Gene Wolfe's background is he's a Catholic, and I was told this by our patron long son, Mal Rubius, who said, Christ, for example, is a healer who sometimes resorts to violence. I think referring to when he flips the tables and is saying, why are you but Christ is a healer who sometimes resorts to violence, where Wolfe wanted to explore a torturer who heals. In a way. So set up with that. Think that this is inspired by Gene Wolfe, who's a devout Catholic, and he converted to Catholicism because of his wife, I believe, who was Catholic. Just there's a lot of his. I want to know where he's going with this message and what's going to happen. I'm invested. We're going to be doing all the books on the channel. Of course. So if you want to join us for that journey, this is just the first one of 4 to 5 that we'll be doing. So anything you want to say before spoilers?
No, let's get right into it.
Spoiler warning. This is going to be a very dense review. Apologies for anything stupid we say in advance. Emotional impact. What did you give out of 5 stars?
I gave it a 4.25. Really great.
Really great.
What did you give it?
I gave it a 3.25, above average. Above average emotional impact. So, what was it going for? How'd you feel?
I mean, it has to be going for a sense of mystery, right? That's probably the biggest one. You're supposed to be sucked into this world and feel that it's mysterious, odd, and just don't know exactly where you are and what's going on. It's supposed to confuse you a little bit. And then beyond that, I think it's just going for an eerie vibe. Most of this book, things happen and the people's reactions to extreme violence is so calm that it weirds you out. Am I off base here? What did you think it was going for emotionally speaking?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right to say it's going for eeriness, confusing, but I think that to us, it could be confusing. Maybe Gene Wolfe is looking at it and wanting people to have to think, but I don't think he wants to leave the readers in a bitter confusion. Bitter confusion is bad.
Yeah.
Mysterious, I guess mystery is a more positive word than confused, because people can look at confused and go, oh, that means you didn't explain something properly. But I guess the first moment for me where I was starting to go, okay, this book is interesting. What's going to happen here? End of chapter 3, where we get not introduced, but in the first couple chapters, we see how Voldeus, I hope I'm saying this character right.
Vodalus?
The Robin Hood character, Vodalus, yes, that character who is the rebel that we get introduced in the beginning, where he saves Vodalus and kills a man early on, but then after Severian's reflecting and he's thinking about Vodalus and thinking, wait, did he imagine Vodalus in his mind? Is he going insane? Did all that even happen? And right from there, you get set up to this, okay, I can't trust anything going on here. I don't know how to take the own narrator's words for how true they are supposed to be. And so from there, I was going, all right, no matter what happens in this book, I didn't even know, I didn't know where to set my expectations. So I was kind of setting it up going, I'm going to be confused. I'm not going to understand everything. So at least the book was set up in a way to make me think, all right, I have to be ready for this. I don't know. What do you think? Was there a moment for you where you got locked into the vibe?
It was pretty early on. A similar scene of Severian killing the man to protect Vodalus, but ultimately not actually acknowledge he did kill the man and try to obfuscate it. Because he's just like, I held it, and then things happened, and then he was on the ground. And you go, wait a minute, that guy died. He killed him. Why doesn't he acknowledge it? And then later on, he kind of acknowledged, like, my first kill. I caught on pretty early of, oh, this character is very unreliable, and I found that kind of fun.
Yeah.
Because it was clearly deliberate. It's not meant to confuse you, like you don't know what's going on. You know the character's deliberately being cagey about things and showing only a certain thing and showing things through a certain light.
Right.
Beyond that, it was just weird. The characters being very calm about torture and mundane about it was eerie, and I was kind of sucked into that world.
Yes, I think this is a good one scene that happened here where I think explains the emotional roller coaster where I didn't know if I hated this book or loved this book. Why I'm kind of at above average overall is there's points where I went, no, I don't get it. I'm not smart enough for this, and I'm confused. I don't understand. Maybe I'll like this in discussion, but I just do not get it. Stop, please. There was many of those moments, but how the book started off, I think Gene Wolfe gives you enough moments to make you feel like you're smart and then rips it from you and then makes you feel dumb again. Because I started off going, oh, I get this. I'm hooked. Unreliable narrator gets kicked out. I'm following the plot line as well, thinking, okay, I understand this. Saves Thekla, has to kills her by giving a knife.
Gives Thekla mercy.
Saves her from torture, same thing. And then gets kicked out, has to go on this adventure. I'm following, okay, this is a typical kind of hero's journey. And Then it goes, oh, there's a chariot race. Okay. Oh, there's a duel. You're being challenged. Oh, where'd that come from? What? All these seemingly random things happen. And then it goes, oh, this one nugget of I understand things now was, oh, that duel that Severian was challenged to in the middle of the book, that was because they want his sword, and the person Aja he's with the whole time is actually there as a trying to get it from him because he wouldn't sell it. So this is why it connects. Oh, I get that now. Oh, okay. Now here's a stage play, and also, by the way, here's a commotion. Oh, bookends. What is going on? Why is there a tree thing root that does that? And he gives you information to go, oh, don't worry, trust me, I'm pulling you in. You understand this, and then confusion again. We're in a random guard. What is going on? I felt that constantly of I get it, I don't. I get it, I don't. I get it, and I ended thinking, I'm curious.
Yeah, there's enough little moments of aha, like I think Gene Wolfe being a bit more obvious to kind of help you and clue in the reader. Pretty early on, Master Pelamon, he references a device, like a torture device, and saying, "Oh yeah, it runs on lightning." There's another word for it, but I don't quite remember.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh, that okay.
That thing.
That's a thing. That was such an obvious like beat over the head. Like, hey, this is dying Earth. It may sound somewhat like a fantasy story, but it's clearly sci-fi.
Don't say obvious. I didn't pick up on it.
No, it's more obvious that you didn't pick up on that.
I did not. Nope.
Oh, okay.
Nope. It beats you over the head. Any dumbass reader would have understood. Not me. I did not.
No, it's the fact that it runs on lightning.
Yeah.
There's another word for it. I can't remember. I'm like, okay, I got it, Gene Wolfe. Electricity. I understand.
Yeah.
But then, because of that, when Severian was on a roof, he was describing this black, like glass-like surface, and it was texture kind of like describing squares, kind of like the mosaic of a turtle shell. And I was like, that kind of sounds like it could be solar panels, and that's where the electricity comes from for the torture device. And that made sense to me. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Those are solar panels. I'm starting to picture. And then, Rockio at the gate tells us, yeah, that tower that that Severian's in and lived in his whole life is actually a spaceship. I didn't know that one. I didn't pick up on that.
Sorry, Chief.
Whoops.
Yeah, that's major.
That's a major one, and I missed it.
Yes. It also helps hopefully we gave expectations to anybody who didn't read this and just read it from our spoiler-free section of maybe you can pick up on more things if you know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Because I think we both walked in with none of that. I walked in knowing it's sci-fi.
I knew it was dying Earth.
I didn't even know that.
That was it.
I thought Books of New Cinnamon. Oh,
there's another clue pretty early on of where it should strike you as odd is how Severian talks about the sky, basically. There's a scene where he talks about a blue sky and how that's really unnatural and not normal, and that kind of makes sense for a dying, like the sun is dying, so the wavelength is going to be, I think, it's a slower wavelength of light or a wider because it's expanding and the sun has less energy. And so the sky and light should look different. So that's another thing that I knew something was off, and it helped to put context together.
You emotionally, did you have anything where you were out loud saying stuff, or did you have any reactions? Because mine...
Most of mine were just, what? How? Huh? And then rereading sections and going, okay. I think I get it. And then not getting it, so.
Mine was just a bunch of head tilts. Yeah, I went through a deep, I don't know if I hate or love this book for a long time. And this again, one of those that rereading maybe you'll give it 5 stars. Maybe that will be the time. But emotionally, is this one of your lower ones?
It is.
Is it? So do you want to go on to, I guess one last, I want to bring up a scene I thought was fun and going, okay, I'm getting some fantasy vibes, even though it's sci-fi, I'm getting some, okay, cool. Where the end scene where he's on an adventure, goes into an inn, doesn't have money to pay or won't pay. And they say, oh yeah, there's these 2 guys who haven't paid for a couple nights. Just we'll lump you up with them and get them out of there. And just I thought it was a nice creative way. Okay, we're gonna build a band of brothers and they're gonna be on an adventure. We didn't see them for a long time. They went away, then came back somehow at the end. But I thought again, I was going, okay, I see where this is going. Meets the inn boys, and we're going on an adventure. Who, by the way, one's a robot. We'll get to that. But okay, thought provokingness. What did you give that out of 5 stars?
The fact that I had to think a lot, 4.75.
Nearly 4, Jeff.
Nearly broke my brain. That's probably more accurate. But yeah, there's a lot to chew on here, and that we'll get into.
I gave 4 stars. Great
Yeah.
thought provokingness. There's obviously a lot that we don't see, but what message and themes were the ones that have you focusing on the most? Well, which one? What is the main one? If there's, I mean, there is a main one. So, do we set you up one?
Yeah, set me up.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to think, like the main one being more on the nature of mercy and justice.
Yeah, which mercy as a torturer, and that I believe is the main message from this, or main theme it's setting, because this book is setting it up.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get the conclusion. Obviously, we're at book 1, but it's setting up those core elements where. What did you gather from the mercy? Why was this mind-numbingly thought-provoking to you?
It's the amount so following Severian, we're always going to pronounce names wrong here.
I think we got that one right. Severian, yeah.
Severian, yeah. Severian has many instances throughout this story of whether he gives mercy or justice, and which one is mercy, justice, and revenge, and how he balances these things.
Yeah.
First off, with Thecla, he gives mercy, and then you ask why.
Yeah.
Did he give mercy out of a sense of the justice is? Did he give Thecla mercy because of his love for her? Did he give her mercy because the law was unjust to her? Because both cases kind of true, where he does realize that she is being held as a political prisoner for something she didn't do, that it's just a pawn to get at Votilis. So that's another reason. Did he also give her mercy because of the connection to Votilis? All these things that he did feel bad for her and let her kill herself so she could stop the torture. But now you have to ask the question of why. And so I was thinking on that for a while. Then later on, when he cuts off the head of Agia's brother, he has to question himself whether he is pursuing justice or is he giving revenge. He's in both. He says he's doing it for a sense of justice. But again, we're left with an unreliable narrator, and so you have to question that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of those things, like that happens enough, and where he's a torturer, he values the law, how much they emphasize that the torturers have to follow the law. They give when they dish out punishment to their clients, they do no more and no less than what they are supposed to do. And so treating it with that kind of reverence, and then the minute he goes outside, breaks a bunch of petty laws. And so you ask, how much does he actually value this justice system, or is he just a part of the cog?
And in this world, torture is not a means of extracting information and going, you think in the real world, torture to get information as a means of torture has a use, even though the morality behind torture, that's a whole separate thing. And also
the efficacy of it. Yes, I understand.
But then in this book, it looks at torture as justice. No, you don't torture because you're trying to get information out of Thecla. They're just this
punishment.
Punish Thecla. Yeah.
There's also a moment where he discusses future future Severin is saying like, hey, I have read some of the histories of Earth Past and how we've had different types of justice systems that value mercy other than punishment, and ultimately the idea of basically being able to try to rehabilitate people, and his stance of so there. Well, what was the no? Sorry, I'm confusing with. He's talking about the dueling system, and that he knows that in history past duels were seen as, barbaric and ultimately devoid of justice and all these things, and he was looking at it in the sense of, if there is some qualm between two individuals and there isn't a duel and you just have the justice system, someone wrongs another and you punish both. You punish one depending on, it was the difference. Oh God, I sound like an idiot.
Hey, it's a Gene Wolfe book. We're both sounding like idiots.
I know. I'm trying to put it in right context to discuss it. He was equating murder to dueling and showing how if you don't allow dueling, you basically end up with murder, taking out the justice system kind of entirely. When someone wrongs another, they go out and harm him or her, like murder them, and then that person's family murders them, and like a bunch of recourse where now you have both people are dead. With a duel, you have one survive. And ultimately that person, how he justified it was the person that survives the duel is also strongest and most fit for, protecting society. And so that's ultimately better. Despite whether or not the person's in the right or wrong, almost doesn't matter to Severian. God. And so I'm looking at it going, Jesus, thinking of that mentality in this world was interesting, to say the least.
Interesting is the right word. The premise set up from this book, this focus on a torturer who shows mercy, and we know he ends up being the king by the end of the book 4. That's set up, was that chapter 1 given away? But the autarch, we know he's going to be. So what? I'm constantly asking questions. The scenes you're bringing up of him not acknowledging that he kills the person, he kind of just describes emotion, axe goes down, whatever it was, and then moves on, doesn't immediately acknowledge he killed somebody. Is his narration in the current day regretful, remorseful? What's he thinking about what he did in the past? Because did he make some sort of journey toward mercy? How did he get there? But that's the core theme for me of why I'm hooked on what is Gene Wolfe trying to say. I need to know what his answer to this fundamental question is. This does a great setup for that, and also the way the unreliable narrator adds on to that. And there's also the theme of resurrection and death, where he survives in the book from the flower thing.
Poison razor flower.
Poison razor flower, of course, because every book has a poison razor flower.
I was racking my brain on trying to figure out if this was a reference to something actually real. Is it like, oh, is he saying flower and it's actually something else?
No.
And I think it ultimately is just a razor poison flower.
That was the one thing wasn't confused. That was the one thing. No, very clearly a flower. Everything else is a spaceship and voodoo in there.
Everything else is a reference to something more tangible and real. And this was the one thing I'm like, no. It's a poison razor flower.
Yeah.
Unless I'm wrong, let us know down below if that's like a reference to something else. But as far as I know, it's a poison razor flower.
Gene Wolfe scholars, please comment below of everything we missed too, and that we're getting wrong. The big theme of resurrection and death, and so you're seeing in the beginning of the book, I had to look into this afterwards. I think Rocky and others were explaining this, but he gets baptized in the beginning in the water. And it kind of has this parallel to Jesus in a way, where this was described to me by Samwise on YouTube. He was also part of that chat that we did, but he has a great video, spoiler-free breakdown on Shadow of the Torturer, where he describes the 3 tiers of of Catholic authors in the fantasy sci-fi space. And you have C.S. Lewis, who is very direct allegory. It's literally Jesus. Look at that. It's very clear that it is focused on C.S. Lewis's faith. Then you have J.R.R. Tolkien, who writes a story where he hates allegory, but obviously it's a fundamental Catholic work he describes in his letters, where it was influenced obviously by his worldview and Catholicism, but he doesn't have Jesus' figure, and literally Aragorn is Joseph and Frodo is it's a story told without him inputting any sort of direct allegory. And then you have the next layer, which is Gene Wolfe in this story, where if nobody told me this is what it was inspired by, it'd go right over my head. I'm reading some sci-fi by some freaking atheist bitch. No, by the way, that would be me.
Yeah.
So I'm so fascinated. And so now I'm going to be keeping in mind those themes in the background, because I think it's very important to keep, like, what is he trying to do? And now I'm here for it. He's got some great lines as well. Go ahead.
One of the bigger, like, Catholic allegories, maybe a bit direct, is just the image of Severin carrying his gigantic headsman sword, which is large, shaped like a cross on his back, and it is incredibly heavy burden that he carries around with him everywhere. Sound like something?
A little bit of
carrying his heavy, burdensome cross? Okay.
I didn't even pick up on that. Yeah, nice. Yeah. And there's also some lines. This is one of the more famous ones from the book that just have you think about stuff. One of them is, "We believe that we invent symbols. The truth is that they invent us. We are their creatures, shaped by their hard, defining edges."
Well, ain't that the truth? Especially for this book.
Yeah. And a lot of this other thought-provoking stuff, it's to be determined. There's stuff that went over my head. There's stuff to think, but obviously it is a book that you have to sit and ponder about. But anything else you wanted to add? This one really got you. You like the puzzle part, I imagine, as well. Just going, hey, there's so much to discover. You're going to think about this.
There's so many little lines to think about for me, like the murder versus dueling, the mercy, justice, revenge. How is this character even seen?
One where he says women are inferior. You obviously agree with all those things he's saying, and the torturing's good. All
of that.
Yep.
I honestly more so the women's servitude thing rather than the torture, but they're about equal of based. Jesus, no, but in all seriousness, though, it is very interesting to see this kind of twisted character experience. Honestly, all of a big part of our discussion with Talking Story was how Severin views women. And
do you want to go right into characters for that?
We can, but there is apparently a lot more where we were told we have to read and find out. It is not just it's not so surface level. When you read it, you go, man, he doesn't understand what love is. He also really can't. He sees women far more like objects rather than people in some ways.
I do have that description here.
Go ahead.
Well, let's go to characters first so we can break down Severin's character.
Yeah.
What did you give characters out of 5 stars?
Characters, I gave a 4. 4 out of 5.
Lower than the other 2. Okay.
Yes.
I also gave it a 4. Great. And what is the main reason for that 4? Why did you think it was great? I'll get right to this right after you.
It's set up. It's ready to go. But across the characters, Gene Wolfe does a really good job of setting up these characters. But ultimately, my attachment to them is not as high as others. I'm wondering, like, are some of these characters replaceable or not? I don't know if. Now, again, this is kind of like it's set up. I don't know if on a reread, maybe I'd vote it lower depending on where these characters end up. But for now, for what questions the characters have given me and the character voice and kind of the presence they do have, I would say it's great, but no greater than that. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. I think similar to Sun Eater, how I think Sun Eater has the best protagonist, Hadrian, and side characters who I'm not as invested in. This, what we're introduced to, is a bunch of side characters who, hey, there's tropes, love at first sight. everyone can seem very flat of who's Aja versus who's Dorka versus Thekla. You know, we get bits and pieces of these characters introduced to Dr. Talos. We get these glimpses that appear, but because we're given this from the unreliable narrator and they're just things just happen in the book, which we'll get into in plot. But all these other characters, I can't really think other than, hey, they're surface level for now. The thing that elevates it for me, that I had to really think about this, why am I so invested in going into the next book? And what just really clicks for me is Severian, where his internal monologue, the way he views the world, and his why are we following Severian's character? He is the right person to follow on this very trippy journey. Because just to give the thing you were mentioning here about his view on women, which is just all of his comments. You just have to think about and go, he is unique. I've not met a Severian anywhere. Even if you look at Hadrian, who it's just to give some context as well, Christopher Rocchio wrote Empire of Silence behind us before he read this series. So he read Empire of Silence, read this book, and then went to edit Empire of Silence.
Yes. That I can tell.
Yes.
There's a cut. We'll bring it up later. But
he finished the book, edited it, and went on. Howling Dark, he says, we're not spoiling any Set Eater, but Howling Dark had some inspiration from this, obviously. We'll get to. But this is one of the thing you were mentioning. You want me to read this part off here? Mm-hmm. So this is a scene where they're at dinner and Aja's coming down for dinner with Severian. Here we go. I have already told how strongly I desired Aja. I'm going to start over one more time, okay? I have already told how strongly I desired Aja. When we are talking to women, we talk as though love and desire are two separate entities, and women, who often love us and sometimes desire us, maintain the same fiction. The fact is that they are aspects of the same thing, as I might have talked to the innkeeper of the north side of his tree and the south. If we desire a woman, we soon come to love her for her condensation in submitting to us. And then in parentheses, this indeed had been the original foundation of my love for Thekla. And since if we desire her, she always submits in imagination at least, some element of love is ever present. On the other hand, if we love her, and soon we come to desire her, since attraction is one of the attributes a woman should possess, and we cannot bear to think she is without any of them, in this way men come to desire even women whose legs are locked in paralysis, and women to desire those men who are impotent, save with men like themselves. But no one can say from what it is that what we call, almost at our pleasure, love or desire is born. As Aja came down the stair, one side of her face was lit by the last light of day, and the other thrown into shadow. Her skirt, split nearly to the waist, permitted a flash of silken thigh, and all I had lost in feeling for her a few moments before when I had pushed her away came back doubled and doubled again. She saw that in my face, I know, and Dorcas, hardly a step behind her, saw it too and looked away. But Aja was still angry with me, as perhaps she had the right to be. So although she smiled for policy's sake and could not have concealed the ache in her loins if she would, yet she withheld much. And then there's more to that too, but just describing as Aja's walking down his warped view of relationship, love, and desire, and all that. I had to read that several times in prep, and I think people listening right now too, this is just for me, so I'm speaking for you if you're the listener right now, I read that and still went, wait, what does he mean? And I read it again to see what he's saying, love versus desire, and how his view of
there's a nugget there of that I think what makes him interesting as a character and his worldview is there's a nugget there that he's touching on of the idea of the different types and forms of love, like difference of love versus attraction. And for him, it's more of like desire versus affection. And so these two things are not entirely the same, but not entirely separate. And some can be, one can come before the other. And it's basically kind of what he's getting at is you can both, like if you are attracted to someone long enough that you eventually can come to have affection for the other, and vice versa. If you have affection for someone that you can eventually find attraction, maybe not always, but like those two come hand in hand. So there's something interesting there to think about and talk, but the way he puts it is also just very, it feels like he has thought about it and then simplified the idea of once he has desired a woman, that also means he loves her and that they're basically the same.
They're aspects of the same thing.
Yes. And then so he just merges them together. And so he's just like, yes, I love her, as I gave her a backhanded slap across the face as she falls to the ground. And someone asks, like, he slaps Agia, and Dorcas says, you shouldn't have done that. She'll hate you even more now. And Severin goes, she hated me at all? It was an open-handed slap. It's not anything like that it's not anything really painful.
Right.
And he just doesn't get it. Interesting.
Yeah, that way of describing, he's obviously thought about it as the thing too, right? So he's gone through that thought process, and the way he views it of, obviously if you love them in your head or just desire, they have to have submitted in some way. And the way he views torturing a client as well, you can see he's got this very dominant way of thinking with relationships, with violence, because when he is taking control in the beginning of the book as being apprentice, become the journeyman or whatever the next step is when the older apprentices graduate and he's becoming a master. In order to take control of the group, he kind of does a one-off description of, I made sure they were in line. And he said forcefully...
I beat the first one, and then basically...
They all submit, yeah.
He beat up a lot more people, and then his second went to beat up the third. And
that's encouraged.
Yeah.
So it's this torturing, this worldview he has is just, it's warped and it's weird and it's so fascinating to read. He's got this his background of being a torturer, why he's the way he is. And he even describes this of when he ends up being disobedient and shows mercy to Thekla, gives the knife. He says when he's being this is a different scene, but disobedience of like the older brothers in the guild, basically if they were to mess with the older brothers in the guild, he basically describes it as saying, in actuality, for being disobedient, we would have suffered nothing worse than a beating, such as the kindness of the torturers who I am subsequently to betray. He even views beatings as, that's a kind form of punishment, because if I'm torturing clients all the time,
well, to him it makes sense.
Beatings are nothing.
Just a simple beating is nothing in compared to like flaying the flesh.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a reason why he can hit Agia and think that it's no big deal. That's nothing. When, to us and even Agia and everyone else in this world, it generally is like, I don't know, a beating kind of matters. That's not, that's not a flick on the cheek or a flick on the nose. It's a little bit more than that. But that's kind of how he sees it. He sees like casual general violence is almost like just a flick on the nose or a pinch.
That's it. So it shows where his mindset's at. And on top of that, how did you view his unreliable narration as he's describing all these scenes? Do you think he's not describing it because it's just nothing to him? It's just a slap. I just put them in line, of course. Or the scene where he kills the man at the beginning. I guess, is he doing it because he's embarrassed of his past, or because he's just looking, that's nothing. I killed a man, of course.
Possibly. It also could be as political propaganda because he is the autarch. He is writing his kind of memoir of, his journey and all this. Like, is it supposed to be turned into a propaganda piece of his rise to power? And so he has to overlook some things it probably is a mix of both. Like, he is a torturer.
He alludes to it still, though.
Yeah, he alludes to it.
He could just not mention it if it's pure propaganda.
Yeah, but then it's also... Now, that's, I guess, the question. Gene Wolfe doing enough of a job of... If he were to make it purely political propaganda from Severin's point of view and deliberately cuts things out, then we just can't put the pieces together. So does Gene Wolfe to kind of step in and allow Severin to let things slip? Or is it just Severin doesn't care and he doesn't see these things as important, and so he only makes general references to it? What do you think?
Yeah, I could be proven completely wrong in these next couple of books, but if it's pure propaganda, I can't see it just being if it is propaganda, then that killing of that person can't be a bad thing to his image, because or else he just wouldn't include it, I feel. So if it is propaganda and he also included that allusion to it, then it can't be something that hurts him at all. Like either it's not viewed as a negative thing because that's why he'd include it, or it's not a propaganda piece. Because I don't think the two can be true. If it's a bad thing that he shouldn't allude to at all, and it's propaganda piece, and that would make him look poorly, those two can't go together. So it's got to be one or the other has to give for him to be describing the violence in this way, or him looking back and maybe this is a way of, because maybe he's made some sort of character arc of being merciful and he's embarrassed. Like I said, that other option, is he embarrassed? Why is he describing things like this? Trying to get to the bottom of that, because he also has this massive contradictions throughout the book, or in his narration, he explains that it is my nature, my joy and my curse to forget nothing. He says he forgets nothing. He has a perfect memory. How many times does he forget stuff throughout the book?
Many, many times.
Like, oh,
I can't quite remember where I recognize this face from, and it takes him like a whole day to remember, or like, oh, you're that guy from this thing, and it's like, I thought you forgot nothing.
Yeah.
How did something like, it clearly wasn't a disguise where you couldn't tell and you couldn't recognize it. You recognize it, you go, oh, you seem familiar, but I forget. It like says he forgot. And yet in the future, when he talks about it, he just doesn't forget anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a contradiction.
I haven't met a character like Severian, and he is elusive, strange, morally corrupt, but getting there. I don't know. I don't know how to take him, because this is the reason it's interesting. I think that if you were to, could you compare him to any other character? Or he seems, I guess, of unreliable narrators. We've read Name of the Wind stuff. We've read a bunch of other ones that aren't coming to my head right now.
I mean, Hadrian Marlowe.
He leans probably more reliable because he's Adrian, but still telling the story in a framed narrative in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess other unreliable narrators, would you want any different? This is the peakest of, I don't know if I can believe you that I've read an unreliable narration.
As far as what I've read, yeah definitely.
I guess what other character did you want to talk about? We have.
I have the list here that we can kind of go through.
Anyone stand out to you?
Let's just go down the list that I have. Vodalus. We don't have much here, but I do want to mention in this review at least.
Yeah.
It was confusing, and I was, in the very beginning, Vodalus and others are digging up this fresh, dead body, and Severin protects Vodalus from the family members and neighborhood people that are trying to defend their dead. And so part of me is going like, okay, what's the bodies for? Is it for some like necromancy thing? Is it for just simple organ harvesting? Because they mention that the body is like freshly dead. And I was like, oh, is it matter for organs harvesting?
Right.
I don't know what it's for. And then later on, when Severin is talking to the librarian, they're talking about cannibalism and how people can consume parts of a body and gain that person's life, like remaining hypothetical life force, and then also obtain their memories and things like that. And basically, by the end of it, you're kind of going, okay, Vodalus is supposed to be a cannibal that is consuming other people for their memories and past lives. Like, Vodalus is looking for a particular person and looking for some type of knowledge. How do you take that?
I take that as, I know as a plot point, as a intrigue. Yes. I don't know who Vodalus is yet.
Yeah.
So him and all these other characters were introduced. So Vodalus and his Thea, his wife or girlfriend or significant other. And you have, and I forget there's a third person we get introduced at the beginning, but all these other characters just happen. So Vodalus, I'm interested in what's he building here? What's going on? But was there any character that the character that you understand and go, oh, they're interesting? Or because we spend the most time with Aja, we get the Doctor and Baldanders and Dorcas. We get those characters. A lot of his love interests that we were talking about in the big review was Thekla, Aja, Dorcas, and the woman. Was there something about his relationship with them? Because obviously we just talked about his view of women. Sorry, I completely curved from Vodalus. Did you have something on Vodalus as well? Because I guess my only thoughts are Rapho for myself. Of he just exists. Like what else can I say about Vodalus? You know?
The other thing I thought would be interesting to reference is just the fact that Severian is immediately tied to Vodalus and immediately respects and wants to follow him. Mm-hmm. And how I don't get why, and I feel like there's more that's not being said.
Wait, a plot point that was elusive and you're confused by? No. Come on.
So I'm wondering what it is about Vodalus that Severian wants to follow.
Yeah.
So, other than that,
was there any characterization besides Severian?
No, everyone else's questions. Everyone had good character, like Dr. Talos and Baldanders definitely had character presence, and their voices were interesting and confusing. But
who are they? Yeah,
they do have a presence. That's fair enough. I will say, I think Thekla, Agia, and Dorcas definitely seem to blend together in a certain way, and I'd say that's fairly deliberate and far of Severian's eyes. I think almost every woman he comes to desire in some way reminds him of Thekla. Thekla is the origin of most of his desire in women.
He did sleep with Thekla. Did sleep with Thekla.
I think so. I'm not sure. Does.
They did, yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure if he did, or is that referenced before?
No, I
it may have passed. Okay. I don't think it's made clear that he does, but I'll take your word for it.
Don't. So we had Thekla, Aja, Dorcas. Yeah, a lot of these, the thing for me when I was thinking about this I think I have this similar thing where I like Hadrian more. I've spent more time with him in so many books, but Severian is the reason the character, the narration here is interesting.
Yeah. And
all these other characters, they're all intrigue, mystery of what's going on. I can't say as far as connection goes, I'm not even thinking, I'd die for Severian. It's just intrigue behind Severian, and all these other characters are mystery, question marks. There we had Droat and Roke, which his masters that we have, Master Porkwall or whatever his name was. They're just there. They are points to progress the rest of the plot. I guess thinking about all that, I'm trying to talk myself into keeping my 4. I think I still stand behind that. What do you think?
Yeah, the others.
What can you say about the other characters? You know,
the main thing about it is you could look at it one way of saying the characters are flat and there's not much to them, but I think it's very clear in the writing that these characters actually are a lot deeper, but we're just not shown it in this book.
Because it comes across like literature. Well, you give the credit of all, the prose is amazing, and this is confusing, so it's got to be layered.
It's the hints that there is something more to these characters, and that air of mystique, mystery, is what keeps them from being just flat plot movers and plot points. One of the obvious ones being like Dr. Talos being a robot and it not actually being said ever, and I completely missed it.
I have a segment for you.
Yeah.
Want to go to plot? I have a quick segment.
Sure.
Plot, what'd you give out of 5 stars?
I give it a 4.5.
Jesus.
Spectacular wowed me.
I gave it a 3-star, neutral. This was my lowest category for sure. I could see, this is the thing. I don't want to misadvertise and have these. Oh my God, the plot. Okay, I have a segment. Okay. Yeah. This is what I call, I got a game show for everybody. This is what I call a game show. Special shout out to Christopher Rocchio for giving us all these facts of the game show by Austin. Did you know? Did you know In the Shadow of the Torturer, number one, it takes place on a spaceship. We didn't know that beforehand.
Didn't know that beforehand.
Didn't know.
No.
I have another one. Did you know that the Autarch and all this takes place in South America? I didn't before reading the book.
I didn't.
But Christopher Rocchio told us. That's it.
That's all
We got more! The game's not over! Okay, we have the next one is the moon landing was featured in this book, which we did not discuss.
I did know that one.
Tell the folks you're going to win the game show. $100 to you.
It's in the library. And they start describing this painting with a character with this like golden visor and like whitish, and they describing that the earth is actually in the background, and they talk about the moon before it was not colonized but habitable, where they actually seeded the moon to grow crops. And so like I'm like, neat, that's the moon landing, that's a cool picture. I get that.
Even before it was explained to us too.
Yes.
Nice going.
I saw that one. I caught that.
And now their moon's green.
Now the moon's green because they grow plants on it now.
And our last one, Dr. Talos is a robot, which we've discussed. These big reveals that one stunned me. I was going, no, how is he a robot? And then John from Talking Story explains it to us on the discussion and breaks down, well, you didn't sleep for 2 days. Here I am thinking, oh, he just must be what is it when you can't sleep? Insomnia or something. Just must not sleep a lot. Says he has a mouth of metal. I just missed that description completely.
I thought it was grills.
I
thought like sci-fi. He has metal teeth. I'm like, sure, why not? Of course he does.
And at the end scene, where that makes sense actually.
I'm like,
that makes
sure.
perfect sense.
Post like I'm going cyberpunk looking. Like, fine, why not?
Yeah. And then he at the end when they're doing the show and Baldanders charges at everybody to go to collect money from the show they performed. Dr. Talos doesn't take any money because he's a robot. Why would a robot need money or food or anything? And I'm like, oh. Basically, he obscured it so much that you have to figure out he's a robot through context clues and just through, because why would he? Yes, it's, wow. Okay, I got it. Well, I didn't get it. Now I do.
Also, Baldanders is something. Not human, but something.
Oh, did you know? Oh, I put the game show song away. Wow. We might have to listen to an ad before it goes on. Nope. Did you know that all the characters who are named after saints, some saint in Catholicism or in Christianity, all the ones that are named after saints are humans. The ones not named after saints are not humans.
I didn't know that until Rocchio told us.
Thank you, Rocchio. And thank you for that segment. We're calling that Austin with help and his only help from Christopher Rocchio. Thanks. And our sponsor today's episode, Christopher Rocchio. So that is all this. There's more. There's a lot more.
There's a lot more. Oh, yeah. God. Did you know that the tunnels that Severian is going under and he's exploring, that he eventually comes out into some weird tree and meets this kind of strange girl, who knows, but those are actually exhaust tunnels for the rocket ships to actually, when they launch off the platform, it doesn't burn the atmosphere. It's like it goes safely into these tunnels.
I did not know that.
I did not know that. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, sorry. I wish I had the music ready for you. Damn it.
You give the music to yourself. You don't give me the music. Fine.
Hold on. Wait. It's coming.
It's too late.
It's coming. Nope. Nope. Oh, it's not playing anymore. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Oh, it was on mute. Hold on.
It's too late now.
It's way past. Do you have another fact? Richard's bald. That actually kind of is a good tune.
That's pretty good.
Okay, so that's just some of the things that you could have missed in this entire book, which is just way over my head. But the plot. What was the main A plot? What was our promise, progress, payoff? What was the story getting across? So how are we set up?
So to start, macro, go micro.
Yes.
By the end, we kind of get this description of Severian going from gate to gate. So from the city where he starts off from the Tower of the Torturers, He's near-ish, apparently, some gate from the wall of the city.
Sure.
And then as he's going on this adventure through the city trying to get leave, the end of this book gets to he's at the other gate on the other side of the city. That's basically where it starts and begins.
Gate to gate.
Gate to gate.
Yeah.
First section is him as a torturer's apprentice in the Tower of the Torturer, where he meets Thecla, and surrounding all this is his confrontation and meeting of Vodalus, and Vodalus's connection to Thecla, mainly through Thecla's sister. All of this back and forth, and we finally get the crux of the inciting incident of the rest of the story.
Wasn't it fascinating that his fellow torturers gave him mercy?
Yes, but for why? Why did they give him mercy? Again, it's always...
Was it mercy, or was it we have a task for you?
Well, is it mercy, or is it to avoid, scrutiny? That they're saying, like, yeah, we should kill you, but if we do, we can't just do it. We'd have to confess to everyone else what happened and why. And therefore we will look bad. So we're protecting our reputation. You don't think he made some friends?
Some defenders?
No.
Oh.
He probably did, but they're like, nah, we'll kill him anyway.
Got it. Yeah.
But yeah,
he gets excommunicated. He gets sent out, and he's given the sword.
Yep.
That has
it has in the center a
mercury
built-in vial of mercury, or enough mercury to significantly offset the weight.
Yeah.
So when he lifts it behind his head, the weight kind of flows to the tip of the sword. So when it goes down, basically it becomes heavier on the way down.
That makes sense. Yeah, I guess why I'm curious why you are very high on the plot. I guess I can see why, but why are you? Before I ramble off. Basically,
it's an incredibly tight plot that by the end of it, I get all the little minutia details, and I know there's more to come. I can tell that this wasn't fluff, and there is a point to it, and all these little references was very impressive to me, and so and the twists were good. They're good twists. So breaking down
which twist got you?
The Agia twist. By the end, what happened? I knew she was betraying in some way, but I didn't know why. And so I enjoyed Agia betraying Severian. I liked that a lot. But the three sections severian is Severian as a torturer, then Severian with Agia Severian with Agia going from place to place before his duel, and then the Severian with the Carney troops, so with the robot and bald Anders. Basically, that's the three sections to talk about.
That middle section, that progress, I guess why I am neutral on this plot. On the one hand, there's just a bunch of stuff that it can feel meandering. It feels just thrown at you of, hey, all of a sudden you're challenged to a duel. Okay. All of a sudden I'm trying to figure out the order of events that's happened. Aja and him are going to get a flower for the duel that he was challenged to in the shop, because the shopkeeper wanted to buy our main character Severian's blade, wouldn't do it. Guy challenges to duel. Severian goes out. Aja and him are going to get a flower to help in the duel. And on that way, they go to a chariot race of just all of a sudden Aja has this other side plot that's going on and the cloth, the conciliator, which we can get to as well. But just this kind of happens because we're so out of the loop with, one, it's an unreliable narrator, and then two, it's in a world and setting that is so foreign to us that to understand even the words that are used in the context of it can be confusing. So on the one hand, there was these plot points that I just felt so distant from okay, it's building up for something. I know it's not bad. I know it's all purposeful. So I'm always I trust the author enough. It's whereas if you read a book where the prose was average prose, a Mistborn, neutral Sanderson prose, right? If you read this and it had more standard writing in the book, but it was super confusing. I might even maybe naturally be less inclined to trust the author knew what he was doing with it, just because the complexity of it makes you go, okay, the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the sentence structure of obviously you're constructing something that I'm not fully grasping or understanding, because you can tell the author's smarter than you. So when I run into those moments that are jarring, and if duel just happens, I'd be complaining till the end of my days if that was in a standard fantasy book of take some of these. Obviously, there's great authors and great writers behind us, but I'm saying Sanderson, where I really like his writing too, but Sanderson prose. If that happened and then all of a sudden there was a scene of challenge to duel, then and it gets explained, I think I'd be more harsh of just going, that was brought up and explained poorly and not set up properly, where you would complain in a normal plot of, hey, that wasn't set up, that got thrown out of nowhere, but because of the setup of unreliable narrator, complex structure, then you go, okay, it must fit in somewhere. I'm just not fully understanding it. It's a me problem. So my 3 is like, I understand a lot if it's a me problem. At the same time, I'm trying to, I was most invested in the beginning of the book, and this is part of this being a 4-book series and so forth, but it just ends. It's gate to gate, but then the book just stops.
Yeah.
And with a little monologue that, Sun Eater-esque monologue.
Nearly word for word.
So I just had to ramble off my complex, convoluted feelings on, I know that you couldn't cut. I just know that it's there for a reason, and he's smarter than I am, but at the same time going, okay, I'm not wowed by these plot twists. I am more interested in the mystery and et cetera. But that's where I'm coming from.
I was invested from beginning to end. I really liked the middle session with Agia and everything with the duel. Seeing a bunch of little things pay off and play out, of even the beginning stuff of him meeting Vodalus and then eventually seeing that third character that was with Vodalus in the gardens.
Hill?
And like,
Hill? The
yeah.
Berg?
But the connection between him meeting Vodalus in the graveyard and his 2 companions and what were they doing. Then much later on, we're at the library and kind of on the side, but it starts, they're talking about a book and they're talking about cannibalism and what, powers and abilities you kind of get from consuming another's flesh, and do you consume their memories, and that's kind of the purpose of it. And then later on, you go to the botanical gardens, and Severian says he doesn't forget anything, but he's like, you look familiar. I don't know who you are, but I can't remember. And then eventually realize that was the guy with Vodalus. We find out he's mentioned before, he's going through this lake of preserved dead bodies, and he's looking for a body. Now all those pieces together, we go, oh, he is looking for a dead body, and he is connected to Vodalus. He's looking for a preserved dead body for Vodalus. Very cool plot structure, and like how I'm starting to piece these things together, even in book 1. That's neat. That's really neat to me. All of these things paid off throughout the book, and I really enjoyed it. I was invested all the way through, and I was enthralled.
Yeah, did you have a problem at all with us running into the same characters, making it feel, oh, hi again, running into the Doctor, running into Baldur, running into Hildebrandt, all these characters that you saw earlier in the book that you happen to run into again, because the book can sound like a bunch of this scene, then this scene, then this scene. What made it work for you in this compared to others?
In different stories, it would be setup, payoff. In more fun twist type of novels, something happens and then later on the twist is shown and explained. And you have that aha moment. In this book, it's almost 3 steps. There's setup, payoff, and then at a third later point, the realization of the payoff. You know what I mean? Of like, the setup and payoff, you don't get it. You don't understand that the payoff did happen.
I will say
until later. That's the weird point.
That middle payoff doesn't feel like payoff yet till realization.
Don't know.
So it's not really payoff. It's just setup, answer, payoff. Maybe
that's the right.
You're not paid off in the middle point. You're like setup, answer. Okay, that explains it. Then payoff.
Well, no, it's setup, answer, and you didn't know it was the answer.
Yeah.
And then paid off, and you go, all these things start piecing themselves together. That was fun. That's an incredibly well done plot in terms of just structure and that promise, progress, payoff. By the end of this book, there were so many different promises, and I didn't know what was progressing. And the fact that by the end, I'm like, oh, a bunch of this did pay off, and I didn't see it coming.
What do you feel about the end sequence with the circus? And not circus, but the show, and then ending the book there on a confrontation.
It definitely feels like half a book.
Yeah.
But then by the end of it, him explaining of like he goes from gate to gate, the next book will be another gate to gate. I'm going, again, it's just a continue in any other writer, if any other book, that would be almost an unacceptable ending. But it's Severin, so like, yeah, kind of makes sense. He kind of glosses over the violence. It's like, yeah, this is a good enough place to end.
Yeah, I think it's you and I are both doing it with all the things that we could. Maybe I'm more boisterous on other reviews, and I'm more strong on my opinions of disliking something or liking. 3 stars is pretty low for a plot. I'm neutral, and I'm not saying it's bad, because the reason I'm not going lower is because I could accurately critique other books and know what I didn't like and go, because it's more clear to say what I didn't like. With this one, it's more elusive, again, to use that term a billion times, but it's hard to say something is bad for which you don't comprehend entirely. So it makes it where I'm interested in. I guess I'm more, the mystery's still there, and I'm hoping by book 2 the plot clicks more for me. Where I guess here's the thing too: the plot looks better after we had a discussion with everybody. Just finishing the book, how I felt about the book was, I don't know how to feel, and the one rating that remains the same for the I don't know how to feel is the plot section, because that was the one when I was reading the book, I was constantly going, I don't know how to feel that question. But that's a good point to make with the, I kind of like that, the setup, answerish, and then realization to the answer.
Yeah.
Payoff
most stories, it's setup and payoff. Like the realization comes at the same time as the answer. You know, when Sherlock Holmes solves the mystery, so does the audience. Like, you kind of have it at the same time, the reveal of like, oh, look at the clues from along the way, and it's now paid off, and it happens at the same moment.
How would you say the Aja and sword scene was set up, answered, and then realization?
Well, first there's the misdirect at the very beginning, because Severian is pulled in by the guards, and then the guard captain's like, one of the guards says like, I don't think this guy's an actual torturer. The guard captain says, prove it to him. And Severin basically folds him like laundry. And so, but then you start to going like, then after that, he goes into town, he's trying to follow the guard captain's advice, like, hey, I look too much like a torturer. I need to blend in. I'm going to go buy a cloak. That's when he meets Asia and her brother at the store. The brother's trying to buy it. He's really pushy, won't sell it. And then ultimately this other person comes in, says like, someone has challenged you to a duel, and it's like some type, makes reference to like a noble or knight. And it's like, oh, that guard captain must have been a knight or something. So that's the misdirect. Then all the way through, you get little nuggets of like, why is Agia actually going along with this? Why is she going to, like, she seems to be putting a lot of effort into this stranger that she just met, which in this weird world, you kind of just go, maybe it is just weird. You don't believe.
I mean, you have the trippy gardens, which
the
section.
Guardians pays off, like I was telling before, of like the Guardian paying off the things previously mentioned in parts 1 and 2.
The more you're talking about, the more it just sounds like set of progress payoff again.
But
yeah, I think it's still it's natural storytelling, but he does it in a very different way. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just he just keeps you more out of the loop than another author would. He doesn't give away. He just doesn't give away his cards initially. So you get that moment of realization about things earlier rather than just going, hey, I understand the background of why I'm being challenged for the duel. It's in post, you understand why that seemingly random scene happened and you get some clarity. You feel like, okay, I understand where this is going. You recalibrate and then another confusing thing happens.
Yeah.
It's just, he gives you the answers after question.
But
the
the random scene of Agia, like, doing the whole the kart racing and ultimately stealing the claw of the conciliator, and how that kind of pays off. And earlier of like, okay, we know she stole it, and now that kind of explains like, oh, that's how he resurrected from the duel scene. That's not explained to you, but like now you start picking it up.
Yeah, I didn't understand it in the book, but then when discussing again, figured it out. So a lot of the payoff comes from
that's also
after
one I
reading
did.
the book. Yeah.
I did pick up on that one
You
myself.
did. Nice,
yeah.
nice.
And I knew that like the claw is probably the thing that resurrected Dorcas. And so that was also
and
something.
Dorcas pulling Severian out and saving Severian, and she's missing her father. That whole subplot with yes, how old is she in the book? 7, but she's a teen, and she is missing her father. Is she in a different timeline? Is her father in a different timeline? That I'm also confused about. TBD.
But you see how like a payoff of him getting the claw and
I was going on a separate tangent. Yeah.
Not a direct payoff to things that randomly happened before, but it's
the prior things.
Prior thing. And it does all connect. And it
of course, yeah.
makes a lot of sense to me. But it grabbed me from beginning to end.
Good. Is there, did you have any qualms about the love at first sight kind of stuff?
Somewhat, like initially I did. And then realizing that it's not the author just kind of being lazy with his Severian's view of love, that it's deliberately he just has kind of a more twisted worldview of domination and oppression, and then just a simplistic view of it. And so, especially when he described what he thinks of as love, you go, oh, that's why he's saying the word love. It doesn't mean the same thing that we think. So that's where I was like, okay.
Yeah.
What about you?
It's very clear. Again, Gene Wolfe's intelligence can obscure any criticism I can give, because imagine this, you're anybody watching this video, if you were to interview somebody that you look up to, they're your hero, or I just got introduced to Gene Wolfe. I just mean this in the sense that you look up to somebody as in they're very smart, or imagine a 10-year-old child trying to outwit their parents. It's in the same way of looking at this plot or the love at first sight, where you look at that in another story and you go like, look how corny that is, da-da-da. I also it's not my favorite trope. So when I'm looking at just meeting women that fawning over Severian or Severian liking them, and that's a typical trope that you can see. What's the reason for it? His view on woman makes it interesting. There's those background stuff. Again, Severian's narration is fascinating to watch. But again, it comes down to how much can you say about somebody that you know. Also, I'm also trying to hold back a lot because the book ends so abruptly, and all these tropes that you could complain about or say are good or bad, it ends so abruptly because it's a part of supposed to be one book. So it feels like we are analyzing a quarter of what we should be analyzing. So something that happens in book 3 and 4 might make me look more fondly or more negatively at book 1 stuff. So a lot of this is I'm holding my punches, because I could by the end of this be like, hey, that was obscure for no reason, that you ended up going nowhere, which I imagine that won't be the case. So again, plot.
The main thing is I don't even know if it's even fair to call this the love at first sight trope, because I don't even think it's love.
Well, he describes it as love.
He describes it, but I think it's almost a post hoc justification of he desired these women. That was basically it. Mm-hmm. That's not particularly love at first sight. And often when we talk about the trope of love at first sight, it is this like man sees woman, woman sees man, and immediately falls in love, and you see the attraction on both sides, and there's this, immediate attraction and affection for one another. And it cuts a lot of the tension, the back and forth. That's generally why you don't like love at first sight. Generally why. This is not that in any sense of the word. These women clearly don't really desire him, and he does not have great real affection for him. He desires them. He wants to dominate over them. And then he says it's love. That's not exactly the same thing. It'd be a lot easier to say that he desires these women. That's he desires them at first sight.
I'm going to commit some blasphemy. Isn't that the same of something like Violet from Fourth Wing? Just desires Xaden and is like, that attraction at first sight, if that's a better word for you. It's just getting to the point of
attraction at first sight.
Yeah.
The reason why. Yeah. It's not love at first sight.
But the thing is, love at first sight is attraction at first sight, because that sort of thing, the love at first sight trope develops into love more when you get to know the person, if using that trope. But no, it's not. The word love is also pretty universal, where you can interchange that word with meaning a lot of things. Love is like fuck. You use them in a lot of different phrases, and they mean a lot of different things when you say it in English. So the love at first sight is just generally saying, oh, you look at somebody and you're attracted to, interested in them. And that's basically when he's introduced to, when we have Thekla, we have Aja, when we have Dorka, these different characters, there's an immediate not conflict, but an immediate attachment, which I'm not even saying is a bad, I'm just saying it's another trope thing that, again, you can be more forgiving to, because it's, who's going to say a person that can write like that doesn't know what they're doing. So,
well, it's also the fact that it happens multiple times is
curious.
Saying it happens with almost every woman he meets, except for the woman under the tree.
Which, the Rockio, I think, shouted that out. Somebody did.
Yeah, it's the one woman that's described very, very differently. Mm-hmm. And we don't know why. Mm-hmm. It says she's going to be important later, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I think it is trying to say, Gene Wolfe is trying to say something about the aspects of desire and attraction.
Yep.
And it's why I like the trope being used here. It's not, it's a good example of using this and playing with it and trying to say something rather than just cutting out tension and the back and forth.
Yeah, tropes can be used well, for sure. So when it's not cliche, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're fair.
Yeah. And just want to go into world building or anything else on plot that you wanted to talk about?
Sure, we can go right on to world building.
What did you give the world out of 5 stars?
I feel like it's wrong to not give this a 5.
Floored you?
Yeah, the world floored me.
I gave it a 4.5, spectacular world.
Yeah, just off the bat, Jesus Christ.
Break down this world for us, Rich.
This world grabbed me and didn't let go? I mean, can you ever be more immersed? Like, the entire world is both confusing yet some degree of consistency and realism. You feel you're transported to this.
I like this book less the more you talk about it. I don't want to feel you're sounding too pretentious. I don't like it. Give me some Red Rising. Ugh. Ugh.
Well, okay.
Feel transported. Ugh.
Why did you think the world was spectacular?
I thought it was spectacular. I had to do a little ad break,
Yeah.
No, keep going. I don't want to interrupt your thought on that.
Well, the thought is already interrupted. Go ahead, bud.
No, start so I can interrupt you again.
Oh, okay,
come on.
Yeah.
What's that meme out there of they're making fun of not? There was that video of one guy was talking about how they were on Call of Duty or some game. And he said, "Oh, I wish I could invite you just so I can uninvite you again." Oh, what was the? Come on, you know what I'm talking about.
The guy asked him,
"Oh, what is it?
Hey, would you be there for me if I was going through something?"
And all his friends just rib on him.
His friends like, "Son, I hope you call me in your darkest hour so I can ignore it."
Yeah, it was great. Just a great.
I hope that I can be the one to carry your coffin so I can let you down one last time.
But yes, you were just flabbergasted.
Yeah, I'm flabbergasted. Like, this world is one of the most realized, confusing, spectacular worlds I've been transported to.
I agree. Spectacular world.
Yeah.
4.5.
Spectacular world. And it floored me with its execution.
I was just playing with words. Yeah. You got the. What did you think? What world building element was there that the gardens, which we didn't touch on very much, are these created gardens which could transport different time and show you biomes from the past. And
this was a combination. So one, that is an aspect. The gardens themselves gave me the final clue, because I think early on in the beginning I was confused on how the sky and light was described and knew something else was off about it. And in the gardens, when they are sort of transported back in time, the clue to that of like, oh, okay, this is a different time. He's not on our own. He's not where he was before. It's some type back in time, is when he was describing the sky as being blue and it being like wrong. Like, skies don't look like that. They're always clear or something like this. And it's always the black of night. So that was confusing, and going like, that world building element helped of me knowing the sky is off and light is not right. Then when he references the sky being actually like our own, clued me in. And I really appreciate that world building element. And that's built up over time. That's not like you doesn't just drop it on you. That's teased a few times to then pay off. But then later on, just the optical illusions, there's so much done with light, mirrors, and refractions, with especially Thekla's story about the sky fish, like just the mirror fish. I was trying to understand that, and I think the observatory also helped a little bit of you can only go in one way because it's... Anyway. Yeah.
Basically, it's a Stargate is how we were explained it by... Again, Chris Verrocchio.
Yeah.
Said it's the Stargate. These mirrors, they're attuned in the way photons hit each other and hit each other faster than light, which causes them to be pushed out of the universe. They can be attuned in such a way that they can pull light in, they can catch light. Fish are projected from another world and captured, or some alien creature that existed in some sort of other plane.
I don't think he was referencing Stargate, like Stargate SG-1. I don't think it's that. I think it's something else.
Oh, I thought he said Stargate.
Yes, but...
A different type of Stargate.
Yes. I think the word has been used in other things.
Yes.
It apparently is in similarly reference to a very old Doctor Who episode.
Okay.
And so in Stargate SG-1, it is quite literally just a wormhole, which is the classic folding space and poking a hole between, taking a piece of paper, folding it in half and poking a hole through, and that's a wormhole.
Voila.
That is the Stargate in Stargate SG-1. This is something else.
Yeah.
Something a lot more confusing.
Yeah, you got the museum exhibit. We have what I was very connected to as well. I thought just the setup, the world building aspect of the Guild of Torturers. Mm-hmm. And seeing, again, the mentality that the torturers have that we've described of viewing them as clients, this twisted form of justice that they have. Also, we get information on how the Torturer Guild was founded, that none of them are born there, they're taken, and also they used to have women at one point, but they're too cruel. I'm going, what? What's going on there? Because obviously in our minds, you naturally stereotype women as being less cruel. And so why were there's all these questions that are being formed. And obviously this world, I shouldn't say obviously when talking about this book, but another aspect of this is, am I correct in saying that the stars, you could see the stars because the light was so dim, in a sense where the sun, since it's dying, the sun is refracted enough you could see stars during daytime, what would essentially be daytime.
The sun is less strong, but it is also expanded. So the sun is bigger.
Which is what happens toward the end of a
Yeah.
So
So it is bigger, but also, the dimmed and basically that's why our sky looks different and colors will look different because the sun is it is projecting a different frequency of light, which was hard to picture in my head, but I know that is the case
Very hard.
somehow.
Yes. And then Gene Wolfe here, he also, this is again coming from the discussion we had, but there's a couple of asides. Gene Wolfe is an engineer as a profession, or was as a profession, and he makes these little quips that we of course would never pick up on, that were then again explained to us, where he made a comment on how airplanes don't need to have wings in order to create lift. And it's an engineering joke of sorts. You don't need to have wings. You can create a different form of an airplane to have lift off. And then the way he was describing horses, he doesn't describe horses as if having another fantasy name of, hey, they're Excalibroses or whatever. It's horses with claws. And the way that it's described in the world, you'd have to... We were even confused at one point about a dog. We thought it was a dog, but other people interpreted it as a different kind of dog. Remember?
Well, I knew it was a different kind of dog, but apparently it's like very different. More different than I was interpreting. Like bear-like, mostly, but they called it a dog.
Talk to me about the dueling flower.
Okay. As a world building aspect, so much of this world is you trying to hunt and find things of a Severian describing something, going, oh, this is actually something that we would know from our world, but it's described in a weird way that I should be able to pick up on these clues.
Yeah.
I was trying to do that with the flower. It was so weird and standing out. I'm going like, this, he's describing it as a flower, but maybe he's using weird words to describe it. So I'm trying to picture in my head.
Yeah.
Is it a type of sword? I'm going like, no. Is it chain link? Like, no, it's literally a flower, and they have leaves they plucked off. They're razor sharp, and they're also poison, and it can grow. So I'm like, oh, it actually is just a flower, huh?
Fun fact: it's just a flower.
It literally is just a flower.
That's it.
It's
because when you're trying to bend your mind and think, oh, this is connected to that, this is actually this. No, it's just flower.
It's just a flower.
Which is cool.
It is cool.
Yeah.
It's
deadly flower, which a Severian survives miraculously.
Or
He's a claw.
Yeah. Claw, or he resurrected again, something like that.
Yes.
But yeah, that was one cool concept of this razor sharp flower with poison, and that ultimately, like, it is as dangerous to its user as it is your opponent. And so the fun dueling scene there is enjoyable.
Yes.
You can pick off leaves to throw like shuriken.
Very cool. Very cool.
Wild, imaginative, and it sticks in your head.
It's got these fantasy elements, so it seems sci-fi fantasy in that respect, and very eerie, cool, transformative world of I'm enveloped in it. I don't understand all of it. I'm very much the same exact feelings I have to Malazin's world. And I'm on book 2, we're on book 2, Dead House Gates. I had the same feelings of I'm at the level of extreme immersion. I'm extremely immersed, but I don't have the full comprehension yet to go, okay, I'm in as I am with Sun Eater or Otherworld. So I'm there. I need a little bit more understanding to get where you're at. But that is, again, it's so cool to walk in this strange land. This gives okay, sorry, quick cut there. We accidentally unplugged the mic, but I think we finished up with world building section.
Yep.
Do you want to go on to prose?
Yes.
Last and least, of course. What'd you give out of 5 stars?
Yeah, 5.
Floored you?
Yeah.
5 stars for me too. It floored me. This is when we're rating
giving
prose,
it any lower would be incorrect. It's like, if I didn't get it, that's why. It's not a book thing, it's a me thing. if I didn't understand something. But
as far as unique styles go, the author's voice, have you read anything like it? It does it expertly. The things that people talk about are these words he comes up with, and each sentence packing a punch. I guess I have some examples. Did you have some examples you wanted to bring up at all, or something about his prose that why does it floor you? How does Gene Prose write? How would you say, what is his style?
I mean, of course, it's a frame narrative style. You could see the inspiration that Rocchio definitely has of the narrator, Severian in the future, interjecting and giving context to how he thought about it. But the rest of the style is definitely that Malazan feel of you buy in. These characters are assuming that the reader knows the world. And so he doesn't there's no hand holding to explain these weird, fantastical things. So other than that, it's very purple prose, poetic, great monologues of, you already gave an interesting one on Severian's view of love and attraction, but there's plenty more in there.
Yes.
While you find your quotes, I have one I wanted to read off that
awesome.
I just thought was, I was up and down, kind of like, I know that. So
it will take you a second to find it?
It will take me a second, but I mean,
I'll wait to read them off. Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Yeah. It's literally the last paragraph. Tell me if you happen to know where this is from. Here I pause. If you wish to walk no further with me, reader, I cannot blame you. It is no easy road.
Yes.
I can see, I can make a guess to what Christopher Rocchio edited on after he finished this book. He added that final line in the book, I imagine. Also, in this book, there was the, what is it? The 10 forms of obedience.
7 or 8 or something.
7 or 8, which I don't think is, created. It's not original to this book, but I'm wondering if that was an influence to Rocchio, because it's very important. It was, yes. So I'm assuming it is.
He said so, yeah.
Yeah, so.
And yeah, you have the narrator being in an framed narrative perspective, as well as that would be spoilers for a book. But something else happens in this book that happens in Rocchio. Yes. Can't say that though. That would be bad. But yes, there's inspiration for sure. And that how, I guess his style, Gene Wolfe's style of prose, when we're rating it as well, we're looking at something that is irreplicable. They have a craft where it sounds like that author and nobody else. It's a style of his own, and is obviously done expertly well, where even if we're confused with the plot or narrative, which we were many, many times.
I'm not confused because the writer didn't explain it clearly. It is visually clear. I can picture it. It's just confusing in its nature in a deliberate way it's a twisted version of our world. And so I shouldn't completely see it.
And the parts where it is most confusing of when it's made up words, where you're not supposed to understand what that means, it's also deliberately obtuse at those points of, hey, this is a made up word, which I believe he uses some Latin roots and combines with words and things that are based on real words as well to make up these things. I think they're called neophysims, whatever word for a new word is, and creates these, and you pick up on a lot of them through context. Sometimes you don't. Again, this is one of those things, if you speed read through and if you just read quickly, the prose can come across horrible because it just comes across too pretentious to understand. If you take the task by grant him your time and just read line by line and understand it before you move on, this is something to admire. It's something to emulate. It's something that Rocchio emulated. Again, it's prose that other authors look to and use. It's a writer's writer in this sense. Other writers admire how Gene Wolfe writes. So it's done that well to where people in the craft, he's the comedian's comedian. even where I'm not understanding something, it's something too, that the puzzle part of it too often isn't just the puzzle of the narrative, but the puzzle of what's he saying here? He used words correctly, just user errors, not understanding words correctly. How do I compute? And then it's that mini puzzle piece in a paragraph. Read a paragraph, and if you're confused by it, this is the fun part about the book. This is what elevated it to a 4-star for me. Is even though plot could sometimes be back, but even take a paragraph, read it, and then if you don't fully understand it, don't just move on. Read it again, and just go. Keep trying. Maybe try to pick up on what's he referring to here. Also, all of these things that we didn't pick up on with the robot and it being in a spaceship, these things that will be clear on a reread, that stuff is also explained in a way in a Malazan, Steven Erikson-esque type where since you're not handheld and explained, hey, robots, it looks like this, and obviously it's a robot in this world, it makes, when you understand it, so much more rewarding of you're now connecting the dots. And on top of all that, so on top of the mystique of his writing, it also sounds incredible.
Yeah, you can take a random page, somewhere in the middle.
Get a good one there.
Somewhere in the middle of the book here. Yeah. The city at the western end of the bridge was very different from the one I had left. At first, there were flambeaux on the corners, and nearly as much coming and going of coaches and drays as there had been on the bridge itself. Before quitting the Bartizan, I had asked the lodge's advice about a place to spend what remained of the night. Now, feeling fatigued that had deserted me only briefly, I plodded along, watching for the inn sign.
We even forgot to mention, there's a whole section in there when he's walking with Aja that Aja doesn't want to hear him, but he gives a whole monologue anyways. He tells that story about Thekla.
Which, how funny is that? Woman tells you, I don't want to hear you tell the story. I'm saying, then I'm telling the wind. And goes on and has a monologue.
I'll name this wind right now.
Well, someone's listening to my story. If it's not you, it's going to be something.
Yeah, just says it. and obviously that's where he's writing this narrative, and that's where you get the narrative. If it's a propaganda piece, whatever it is, he's writing this going, I'm getting this down anyways.
Well, I was also putting it to maybe it's kind of how his memory works. If he wanted this, if he is being truthful, if of how his memory works,
mm-hmm.
he was able to perfectly recall the story word for word and repeating it as he heard Thekla said it.
Yeah.
And he wanted to hear her say it again. So that's why he's speaking out loud.
Yeah.
He is repeating her words and in that way
sense.
Listening to Thekla's story again. Instead of just remembering the points of it, he wanted to hear her say it.
That makes sense.
That's how I took it, at least.
That makes perfect sense, yeah. And we also have, this is after he rose the ranks in the Torturers Guild and swore the oath for that 1 or 2 days before he betrayed them. He was describing the weight of the office, how it felt on him. And I really like this one line at the end here. He says, the full weight of that office did not impress itself on me until the ritual was nearly over. I was sitting in the ruined chapel, enjoying the pageantry, and only just conscious, in the same pleasant way I was anticipating the feast, that I would be senior to all the rest when the last of it was done. By slow degrees, however, a feeling of disquiet seized me. I was miserable before I knew I was no longer happy, and bowed with responsibility when I did not yet fully understand I held it. I'll read that once more. By slow degrees, however, a feeling of disquiet seized me. I was miserable before I knew I was no longer happy, and bowed with responsibility when I did not yet fully understand I held it. That is such...
I was miserable before I ever knew I was
no longer happy. I was miserable before I knew I was no longer happy, and bowed with responsibility when I did not yet fully understand I held it. And it's such a... Even though Severian, you can't relate to the guy, right? But you're just thinking of that and how true a lot of these statements are in life. So you get these little snippets and sonnets of...
Well, how many times when you when a bout of depression does hit you, you don't realize how miserable you are. Like, you actually, for some time, you can think of yourself as being happy. You should be, and you remember that feeling. And then you realize you've been miserable for a lot longer than you've realized. Like, you've been miserable longer than you've realized that you've become unhappy.
Yes.
It's a very true statement. It's very interesting being written here.
It is. And it's not even that moment is big in the book and an impactful, oh my goodness, what payoff with that line. All of these statements they're kind of casual remarks throughout. And the mention we said at the earlier part of the episode about symbols. And so you could see where Rocchio picks up in his prose of how just has this monologuing way of philosophizing or describing things in ways that make you go, oh, look how true that is. A lot of really good prose obviously says things, describe things well, but then sticks you with some words of wisdom throughout. And maybe words of unwisdom, the whole love and desire thing, and how sometimes the twist of view sometimes hits true, just the way Severian's viewing the world. And I know if you're already at the end of this video, you've probably already read the book, but if you're going to go read this, especially on reread, just try to take it. This is something to admire.
I think this is one of the fun immersion reads, is which I enjoyed, is listening to the audiobook while following along here. And then when I wanted to stop, I would just pause the audiobook and I'd go back and physically read that section again. And that was really enjoyable way to consume it.
Heck yeah. I'm glad we told people to do that after they read the whole book and watched the episode. We're so helpful. Yeah. Wow.
Hopefully you can pick up on context clues like Gene Wolfe clearly wants us to do.
Yes. And Gene Wolfe, I know he didn't pass too long ago. I think it was 2019 or so. I was looking how old he was because he wrote this in 1980. But I'm going to be looking up some interviews and whatnot after this because, wow. But we will be continuing with the series. Great book, confusing book, more to be said, more to learn. This is definitely one of those to remember.
Yeah.
And it's not on my top 50, but it is.
The series may.
It hit your top 50.
Yeah, it's already up there. It's in my
top 25, maybe.
Possibly. I'm already kind of wowed, and a lot of my score is the anticipation. Like, I believe that it's going somewhere, and I feel it.
Oh,
and
I trust it too.
I've picked up on a lot and was explained even more, and then I trust that more will come. And I'm just so invested at this point. But yeah, if you're interested in hearing our thoughts and others, we will be continuing this read along on Talking Story. Actually, didn't
no? I think on our channel for next one. Yeah,
I think the next. So for book 2, we're gonna have our read along discussion with Talking Story, John Jacob, Samwise, Rocchio, and plenty others. Are going to be coming on, and
they were also. It was great to meet people.
They'll be on our channel. We'll announce it before it comes up.
Yes. Thanks everybody for watching this one. I hope we did some justice to the breakdown here. That is The Shadow of the Torturer.
All right. Let us know what you think down below.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.